horror is obviously a video game genre that I'm pretty passionate about, and when fantastic horror games get greenlit for a sequel, my excitement level is through the roof. And since we are in the golden age of survival horror right now, us horror fans are eating pretty damn good when it comes to us getting sequels and remakes within our favorite franchises. So on this episode of Nerdspace Games, I'm giving you guys 10 upcoming horror game sequels that I'm most excited for. From smaller indie devs giving us a surprising sequel to iconic franchises that have been dead for years coming back with a new mainline game. These 10 upcoming horror game sequels should definitely be on your radar for the next few years. Before we get started though, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel for more survival horror content. Also hit that like button if you enjoyed today's topic. Anyway, my name is Ruben with Nerdspace Games, and these are my top 10 best upcoming horror game sequels. Let's get it. Number 10, DreadOut 3. Since it doesn't look like the Fatal Frame series is coming back anytime soon, I have to look elsewhere for my Asian culture horror games. And while the DreadOut games are far from being considered masterpieces, they do scratch that Fatal Frame itch that I get every now and then. Like the Fatal Frame series, the DreadOut games feature a female protagonist thrown into unique set pieces inspired by Asian horror stories in which the player has nothing to defend themselves except for a camera. In the case of this trilogy, players portray Linda, a young woman with a psychic ability that lets her see and fight against the supernatural. Unlike the Fatal Frame series, DreadOut follows the same protagonist throughout all three games on her journey to fight against the paranormal in iconic settings inspired by Indonesian urban legends and horror stories. The third game looks to do the same by continuing Linda's story, and I for one can't wait for this game. Again, it definitely doesn't reach the same highs as the Fatal Frame series does, but at the time of me making this video, it's probably the closest we'll ever get to a new Fatal Frame game. DreadOut 3 is scheduled to release sometime in 2026 exclusively to PC for the time being. Number 9, Directive 8020. So I don't know if this next game really counts as a sequel, but I feel like it's close enough since it's the 5th installment of the Dark Pictures anthology series developed by Supermassive, that being Directive 8020. From the very beginning of this series, Supermassive announced that they will be making 8 different games within this franchise, and each game will tell a different story, feature different actors, and explore new and exciting mechanics within their choose-your-own-adventure horror franchise. Inspired by their previous game, Until Dawn, this series delivers short stories with plenty of endings that are based on the actions of the players. This next game, Directive 8020, looks to be slightly more ambitious than its predecessors as it appears to feature more gameplay than previous entries. Plus, the fact that it's inspired by John Carpenter's The Thing and has a whodunit factor added to this sci-fi horror story, yeah, Directive 8020 definitely has the potential to be the best entry in this series. Though I will say to manage your expectations for this game, as the series has never been the best of horror games out there, but rather a subpar experience, leaving you mostly satisfied with a unique horror story in which you control the outcome. Directive 8020 looks to release on PlayStation 5, Xbox Series, and PC on October 2nd of this year. Number 8, The Sinking City. The first Sinking City game featured a combination of survival horror elements and mechanics with themes, monsters, and characters inspired by the mind of Lovecraft. In fact, I would go as far as saying that The Sinking City is easily one of my favorite Lovecraft video games out there. Sure, the game is nowhere near as scary as other survival horror games, and it actually adds a lot of humor to the storytelling and characters, but all in all, the horror themes and monster designs are present in this game from start to finish. And a sequel set to release later this year, maybe, looks to expand on the survival horror elements even more based on what we can see from the gameplay footage so far. Now honestly, I've been hesitant about believing that this game will release this year, especially with ongoing world events impacting the development of this game. However, at least at the time of recording this, the developers have posted gameplay footage and have said recently that this game is still expected to release in Q4 of 2025. And everything I'm seeing so far on this game looks absolutely fantastic. It gives off Alone in the Dark vibes, but not as clunky or as basic with the monster design and set designs. Instead, this game looks to be really diving deep into the mind of Lovecraft and creating some truly terrifying monsters and set pieces inspired by his work set in the 1920s. The Sinking City 2 looks to release on PlayStation 5, Xbox Series, and PC sometime this year, looking like it's going to be Q4 2025. Number 7, Little Nightmares 3. As a recent fan of the Little Nightmares franchise, I'm extremely excited and also a little nervous about the third entry of the series. So far, the first 2 Little Nightmare games have been masterpieces. I loved everything about them, from the incredible set designs to the play on children's fears, but with mature and horrifying monster designs, the Little Nightmare franchise is one of the most unique series in the horror genre. Actually, I would argue that these games kind of made the horror platformer subgenre popular, which motivated gamers to go and experience other games that inspired Little Nightmares like Limbo and Inside. And from what I've seen of Little Nightmares 3 so far, it looks great. I'm confident that Supermassive will deliver a great game that'll make Little Nightmares one of the better horror game trilogies out there. But that's kind of the problem. In case you didn't know, Supermassive is not the studio that developed the first 2 games. Tarsier Studios developed the first 2 games. And since Embracer Group purchased that studio, but not the Little Nightmares IP, well, Little Nightmares remained with Bandai Namco, and they had Supermassive work on the next installment of the trilogy instead. And I do have faith in Supermassive. They are a talented studio. In fact, Supermassive did assist in developing Little Nightmares 2, which is considered the best of the 2 current games of the franchise. But they've also had their fair share of misses in the past, and honestly, I'm more interested in Reanimal, which Tarsier is working on, and that game is pretty much the spiritual successor to the Little Nightmares franchise. Still, I'm gonna give Little Nightmares 3 a chance, and if it's as good as it looks, I'm sure I'll really enjoy this game too. Little Nightmares 3 looks to release on all modern consoles on October 10th of this year. Number 6, Corpse Party 2. One of my favorite underrated horror visual novels is Corpse Party. I actually really love Corpse Party Remake, and honestly, it still sends a shiver down my spine every time I think about that game. It was that terrifying. Sure, it didn't have the jump scares or atmospheres that most horror games had, but where it lacked in those departments, it made up for its intense, mind-blowing ghost story that'll leave you speechless long after the credits roll. Since the original game though, the franchise has kind of been all over the place. In fact, there have been many spin-offs that took place in alternate realities of that same first game, to the point where the franchise just kind of wore out the story completely in my opinion. However, a while back the series attempted a sequel called Corpse Party 2, Dead Patient. And while the first episode of this game was released and had a lot of potential, we never saw the rest of that game. Anyway, the developers claim that Dead Patient will still get completed at some point. However, they also told us that Dead Patient is not the actual sequel. And the true Corpse Party 2 is releasing later this year, and it's called Corpse Party 2 Darkness Distortion. Now, what's really funny about this is that there are a lot of themes that connect to the story of Dead Patient, including the name of what appears to be the main protagonist of Darkness Distortion, and the fact that it appears to take place in the hospital, which is also where Dead Patient took place. So while we don't know all of the details about this game, it looks like it will somewhat be connected to Dead Patient, and hopefully we'll get a ghost story that reaches the same highs as the original Corpse Party did with the Heavenly Host Elementary School. As of now though, Corpse Party 2 Darkness Distortion is set to release later this year at some point on PlayStation 4 and Nintendo Switch. Number 5, Outlast 3. Both Outlast and Outlast 2 are easily some of the scariest horror games out there. These games have mastered the art of stealth horror courtesy of the terrifying and relentless stalker enemies, plus the use of a video camera as your only light source. But while Outlast Trials was a fun co-op experience within the world of Outlast, fans have been itching for the next mainline entry to give us nightmares once again. While not officially dropping any teasers or trailers yet, Red Barrels confirmed back in December 2017 that Outlast 3 was in development, but it would be a while before it released. In the meantime, they were developing a spin-off game, which of course we now know as Outlast Trials, and that game would hold us over until the eventual release of Outlast 3. Unfortunately, we haven't heard any updates about Outlast 3 since then, as the studio is focusing on updates for Outlast Trials for the time being. Still, I imagine that we can't be too far off for the team to complete this trilogy, and if I had to guess, they probably want to get the third game out before 2030, so maybe 2027? Who knows though, either way, Outlast Trials is a fantastic game, and while I'm definitely looking forward to the eventual third game, I'm totally fine with updates to Trials to keep me entertained until then. Number 4, Tormented Souls 2. As of right now, my favorite indie survival horror game of all time is Tormented Souls. I really love that game, mainly due to how well it understands classic survival horror. Fixed camera angles, extremely difficult puzzles, iconic music, limited saving, limited resources, and a great setting for a horror game. The first Tormented Souls understood what it took to make a great classic survival horror game, and I'm extremely excited to see what they come up with next in the sequel, Tormented Souls 2. I've actually had the opportunity to play the demo recently, and so far it appears to check all of the boxes once again. This time we seem to be exploring multiple different buildings in a small, somewhat abandoned ghost town full of new and terrifying monsters around every corner. The demo that I played showcased everything that I loved about the original, complete with improved visuals, courtesy of Unreal Engine 5. I don't want to talk about the story of the game because honestly, I don't want to spoil the original game for those of you that haven't played that game yet, but this game looks to continue from where the good ending of the original game left off. Anyway, Tormented Souls 2 is still planned to release sometime this year on PC, PlayStation 5, and Xbox Series. Also, side note, there is a demo available on Steam right now. Number 3, Silent Hill F. It's finally time, horror enthusiasts, as the Silent Hill franchise will be releasing its first mainline Silent Hill game since 2012 on my fucking birthday. Let's go, guys. Again, it's been 13 years since we got Silent Hill Downpour, and I'm extremely excited that the franchise is back. I'll be honest, I was hesitant about this game at first when it was revealed back in 2022 during the Silent Hill transmission, mainly because I just didn't have any faith in Konami at that point, but after the success of Silent Hill 2 Remake last year, and after seeing some gameplay for Silent Hill F, I'm sold, guys. I really am. And the best part, like I said, it's releasing on my birthday. Anyway, Silent Hill F looks to take the franchise in a different direction with its story, as the game will be set in Japan for the first time ever and take place in the 1960s. The monsters look absolutely terrifying in this story. Well, the story, I'm betting, will be one of the most disturbing and insane stories ever in the series, courtesy of the writer behind When They Cry handling the script. Seriously, I'm beyond hype about this game, and while I'm a little disappointed by the lack of firearms in this game and the fact that it'll focus primarily on melee combat, I still think this game has the chance to be the best mainline Silent Hill game since the days of Team Silent. Well, obviously excluding the remake of Silent Hill 2, of course. Anyway, Silent Hill F is releasing on September 25th on PC, PlayStation 5, and Xbox Series. Number 2, Alien Isolation 2. One of the biggest announcements of last year that kinda went under the radar since it was revealed in a tweet by Creative Assembly was the fact that Alien Isolation 2 is currently in the early stages of development. This is fantastic news considering that Alien Isolation is regarded as one of the best sci-fi horror games ever created. It's also one of the best stealth horror games ever thanks to the insane Xenomorph AI that was adaptable to your playstyle. To this day, no stalker enemy in a horror game has impressed me more than the Xenomorph's AI in Alien Isolation. Yet despite how well this game was received by fans, some critics, looking at you IGN, completely butchered this game and it ultimately didn't do well financially. Despite that though, the hype around the Alien franchise has grown recently, courtesy of Alien Romulus, restoring faith to the fans of the series once again. So, with the hype being higher than ever before, it was only a matter of time before we saw one of the most popular and arguably the best Alien game out there return with a sequel to continue the cliffhanger ending that we saw in the first game. Unfortunately, the good news stops there, as since this game is still in the early stages of development, we know next to nothing about this game. We do know that the director of the first game will be returning to direct this game, so there's that at least. Outside of that, everything else is kind of up for speculation. The title, what consoles, release date, we don't know any of that, but you know what? At least we know we are eventually getting this game. That's enough for me. Because my dumbass put this game on my list of horror game sequels that we'll probably never see. But hey, maybe I jinxed myself in making that video last year. So Evil Within 3 next maybe? Krafton, want to get the IP from Microsoft next and make it happen? Please, please, I'm begging you, please. Number 1, Resident Evil Requiem. I mean, did you guys really expect any other horror game sequel to claim the number 1 spot other than Resident Evil Requiem? You're talking to a Resident Evil content creator, for crying out loud. Of course, I'm most excited for the next mainline RE game. And honestly, can you really blame me? I know us RE fans are kind of spoiled, but the fact is that when RE9 eventually releases next year, it'll be the longest time in between Resident Evil games. Yeah, believe it or not, 3 years is a long ass time for Capcom to release an RE game if you look at their history. So, us RE fans have been spoiled by Capcom, and this way has been eating us alive, pun intended. From a story perspective, RE9 looks to be doing a full circle moment by having us return to one of the most iconic locations of the entire franchise, Raccoon City. Well, sort of. Spencer Mansion is technically the beginning, but you know, it's adjacent to Raccoon City, so whatever, same thing. Anyway, getting the opportunity to revisit Raccoon City nearly 3 decades later is going to be absolutely insane, and it honestly sets the stage up for so much fan service. Like the theories, oh man, they are all over the place right now. As for the gameplay side of things, well, this will be the first game to feature 2 different perspectives at launch. Yeah, Resident Evil 9 will allow the player to experience the entire game in either first person or third person. Sure, Village had this feature too, but let's not forget that third person was actually added to the game a year later. And that game wasn't built with third person in mind, so there were some obvious issues with this mode. However, with RE9 being developed with both perspectives in mind, this instantly makes this game the most ambitious game of the entire franchise in terms of the gameplay alone. Hell, if they just find a way to include fixed camera in there as well, then they would be making every sort of Resident Evil fan out there happy, now wouldn't they? Regardless, I'm beyond hyped for this game. The story, the new protagonist Grace, the connections to the Outbreak games, and everything else related to this game makes me think that this game could be the game that finally tops the original Resident Evil 2 as my favorite game of the franchise. That's a tall order, I'm not gonna lie. Am I being too optimistic? Maybe. But hey, I've been waiting 3 damn years to talk about this, so sue me. Anyway, Resident Evil 9 looks to release on PC, PlayStation 5, and Xbox Series on February 27, 2026. Let's fucking go. But that does it for this episode of Nerdspace Games. Hit up the comments and let me know which horror game sequel are you most excited for. Is it Resident Evil Requiem? Are there any other major horror game sequels that I missed or completely forgot about? Let me know all of your thoughts down below. Anyway, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to my channel for more survival horror content. Also, leave a like on today's video if you enjoyed today's topic. And don't forget, if you guys are looking to pick up some G Fuel, use my code Nerdspace Games to support the channel. But thanks for watching, and as always, I'll catch you guys on the next episode of Nerdspace Games. Take care.